Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to episode number 7 of our Powerstroke swap series. So I'm sure you could tell by the little opening intro there, we got a little bit of work done on it here since we last worked on it. I got everything with the engine almost completely done. There's a few little things we got to do left. I still need to hook up the fuel lines. I got a little bit of wiring that I got to connect in there, and that's pretty much it. So really kind of excited with how that's all coming together. This episode, what we're going to work on is getting the last of the wiring switched out. Like I say, when we did the engine install, we got the engine compartment harness done. We obviously did the engine wiring harness. We got to do the frame wiring harness still, and we got to do the dash harness. So what I'm going to start with here is pulling the dash out and then replacing the wire harness that comes all the way from down in the bulkhead up and across. That way I can get my OBD2 port. I can get all the correct wiring and everything that is specific to the diesel. So this is actually going to be kind of an easy job, mainly because I've already got my bench seat out. The reason it's gone is because I finally actually got somebody to buy it. It was a solid bench seat, very much. I think it was actually the exact same seat as this back seat is. It's no split, no recline, no adjustment other than slide forward and backward. It was pretty uncomfortable. So luckily I got it sold. Episode a little bit later down the road, I have a 40-20-40 bench that I'm going to reupholster because it's tan. I have gray upholstery, so we'll work on doing that and putting it in, but that's going to all happen after we get this truck running. So obviously I got a couple of things here taken apart. Mainly what I ended up doing was I took this piece here out. This is for the gas powered truck. The main difference between a gas powered one and a diesel powered one is the gas powered just has like a blank over the top of this. I didn't want to buy a new one of these panels just because they're expensive. I have this one. They're essentially the same panel, just on the diesel this is cut open. So I took this display out of the donor truck. This is just the warning light module or display or whichever you'd like to call it, and all you have to do is cut the opening. And the way that Ford does it's pretty cool. You can see right here, this is if you had like a Eddie Bauer edition Bronco and you had the electronic 4-wheel drive. This is where the switch would mount. So you can see they already put the mounting post where the switch would go. So all you have to do is just get in here with like a Dremel tool and a sanding drum and just grind this little bit of plastic off, and those inserts fall out. So real simple and easy to do. I kind of did it when I had some spare time, and unfortunately I didn't catch it on video, but real simple and easy, and then you just screw it in. So this piece here is all done and ready to go. The other thing I did here too was I took the instrument cluster and I went ahead and I cleaned it up. It was actually pretty dusty and dirty inside, and I ended up switching my PSOM or the odometer from the diesel truck to the gas truck. So the PSOM that was in the diesel truck had like 320,000 miles on it. This is the PSOM out of this truck. It has 217,000 and change on it. So this is the gauge from the gas. Obviously the other one's here from the diesel. It says on your diesel fuel, and then obviously our TAC is going to be different, and it says in the turbo diesel. The oil pressure and coolant temperature gauge actually appeared to be the same between the diesel cluster and the gas cluster, so I really don't think you'd need to worry too much about changing those. And the other thing I did here is I pulled out the glove box, mainly just because I was kind of curious here on how the cable for the HVAC system hooked up on this one compared to the 97. They're different. So 94 older, it has a clip in here that holds that cable on, and it's like a push-pull little lever that changes the temperature. On the 97, they run 2 cables up into here, and instead of having a little lever with an arm, it goes to a bell crank. So I was kind of curious to see if it would be worth it. I heard the 97 HVAC system is a little bit better. I mean, I can kind of see why you have 1 cable. If it breaks, you lose your temperature control, but I really don't know that it's going to be worth the effort of changing out the heater box to do. So pretty much just going to keep that in there and run that. So I think it's enough talking. We'll get started here on getting this dash out. I'm basically going to start by pulling out the instrument cluster. There's a big aluminum brace in there that everything kind of supports off of that. And then we're going to end up pulling out the brake and clutch pedal and the accelerator pedal, because none of that's going to be used anymore. So once I can get the steering column and the brace and the pedals out, it's going to be a couple bolts and this dash is basically just going to fall out. So we'll get this set up and I'll show you how we're going to do that. Alright, so instead of me trying to fight this thing out right now, it is being a little bit stubborn. I'm actually just going to kind of leave it here hanging. Kind of my main reason is it's hanging up on my parking brake, and I don't want to release it right now just because I am on an incline. I don't know 100% sure if my transmission's in park. I'd really not rather guess with it. So I'm just going to kind of leave it how it is. As soon as I get this dash to come loose, that piece is going to just fall out anyway. I don't have to take it out to get that out. I just need to take it loose because, like I say, this does kind of hold the dash up here, and I won't be able to pull it out with this bolted in place. So now we definitely got this loose. I actually just gave it a little tug just to see if it was coming loose, and it is literally falling right off. So I'm just going to kind of roll this and let it kind of set here, because like I say, I still have a bunch of stuff here that's connected that I need to deal with. I got the vacuum harness here for the HVAC system that I forgot to disconnect. It's just one little connector right here, real easy accessible from under the dash. I got a wire for my backup camera, the radio, and the climate control. So I want to undo all of that, and I want to kind of clear a spot out here, because all I'm going to do is just take this dash, I'm going to flip it down right here and then pull that wire harness out, switch it, and then we're going to put it right back up on. So no need for me to take it completely out of the truck for what I'm doing. And then once I get it back in, then we can deal with everything else. I'm probably actually going to take the pedals out right now, because that is super easy to get to. That's way easier than it was the first time I did that. So it's just 4 13mm head nuts, and then there's 2 on the other side that hold the slave cylinder in that are already out. And I got to undo the brake push rod here, so I think I'll do that first. So one of the things I am going to take is this inertia switch. This is what kills the fuel pump in the event of an accident or a rollover. So what I'm going to do essentially is still kind of wire it as an inertia switch for the fuel pump. I'm going to locate it under the hood though. So that way I do at least have a little bit of protection. If I ever get into an accident, I can count on that to kill the fuel pump. So kind of the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get all that disconnected. Obviously, like I said, the antenna, mainly because I didn't want to try and loop it through there. It's really hard to do without taking the windshield wiper panel out. And I'm going to be reusing that antenna. So and then my backup camera here, which wires just about stretched to the max. There we go. So I'll get all that undone, and then we're just going to start taking all this stuff off little piece by piece, and we're going to get the new harness kind of laid in as we go. All right, guys, so we've pretty much got the dash just laying down here. So what I'm going to start doing is just pulling all this wire harness through A majority of the stuff's going to attach from the backside. Some of it, like, you know, the headlight switch, the fuse box, I'm going to kind of have to flip it over, unbolt everything. So I'm pretty much just going to pull as much stuff loose from the one side as I can, and then we're going to flip it, unbolt everything, and then take everything else out the rest of the way. Okay, so now let me show you the biggest headache that we're going to have of this entire project. Outside of the engine, everything else that we've installed, this dash harness is going to be a headache. So this right here is the harness out of the 94. This right here is the harness out of the 97. I was really hoping that I'd be able to just take that 97 harness, put it in the 94 truck, and have everything work. I really didn't think that Ford had changed a whole bunch. Unfortunately, there is a few small changes that are going to turn into a huge problem. One of them, on the 94 harness, I have actually this black module right here and that kind of a gold color. This right here is the anti-theft module, and this one right here is my keyless entry. I really want to keep those. I like that this truck has factory keyless entry and factory anti-theft. I don't want to lose it. I don't want to put an aftermarket system in. Now that would probably be the easy solution here to one of these problems. This one doesn't have that, which I didn't think was going to be a big deal. I knew that going into it that it didn't have keyless entry. I was really hoping that I was going to find these connectors taped up in the harness, and they're not there. So I cannot transfer the keyless entry or the anti-theft to that harness. The other issue that I found is these connectors here that go to the floor harness. Again, I didn't think it was going to be that big of an issue. But when you look at the harness here for the 97, of course I got this all tangled up because I was digging in here, the connector's round. So even if I were to go to the donor truck and I got the harness that plugged into here to run the back half of the electronics in the truck, I'm still going to be missing a bunch of circuits. I think, and I could be wrong here, but I think it's going to be easier for me to transfer the components I need out of this harness and put them into this harness. So it's going to be a very time-consuming process, and I'm hoping it works. I'm hoping I have everything installed and hooked up correctly. I'm going to kind of show you what I did, and really the only way I'm going to know 100% sure if I got it right or not is to plug it in and see what works, what doesn't work, if I have any fuses that pop. So I'm hoping I did this right. I'm about 5 hours into it right now of just repinning everything and trying to make it perfect. So let me kind of show you what I did. So starting here, this is the 97 harness. This is the one out of the donor truck with a Powerstroke. These two bulkhead connectors have a majority of the wiring that I needed to transfer out. There was some stuff that ran into the fuse box. So one of the things you can see, this great big circuit breaker right here, this is actually out of the 94 harness, or the gas engine harness. The way it's set on the diesel is instead of having that big circuit breaker, you have a 3 amp fuse and a 30 amp fuse. So if you see, there's a little like kind of a dummy plug that goes in here. So when you pull that circuit breaker out, you pop this piece here out of the other fuse panel and switch it over, and then there's two wires that you have to run in. This 3 amp fuse goes to the idle validation switch on the accelerator pedal. So these wires here I had to transfer over from the other harness. I had to transfer over, where is it here? This harness. This is one that goes to the instrument cluster warning light. This harness here is the one for the fuel tank selector. A majority of the wires in these two bulkhead connectors are similar. They're in the same location, they're the same color, the same gauge, so that kind of makes it really nice. And a lot of that stuff goes to like the ABS module, climate control, pretty much anything that had to deal with the engine between the two harnesses had to be transferred over. So really what I ended up doing, there's a bunch of stuff on the instrument cluster wiring that had to be changed out too. But really I just kind of started at one end and then worked my way down, and then as I get done with a section I'd start taping everything off, and then I went back through and double checked everything. And a majority of that stuff, like I say, it's all pinned the same with the same wire, so it kind of makes it easy to see what's right and what's wrong. So now I have this 97 harness here, is basically garbage. I really can't do anything with it. I mean, I guess I could save a couple of the connectors if they ever break, but really they're not going to be needed. So now on this harness, this is the original harness out of the 94. I should have everything here that we're going to need. I have the wiring for the cigarette lighter, which the main difference between the 94 and the 97 is on a 94, this is only one wire coming out of here, and it's powered from the fuse box. Where on the 97, this other leg ties into the back of the data link connector, so that's where they're getting their power for the OBD2 connector. This right here is actually tied into the wires that go up here to the PSOM. So on the 97 harness, it had this connector here, where on the 94, it actually went from this bulkhead connector, it linked back into that one, and then it went over to the OBD1 connector. All the wiring for the trailer brake stayed the same, and that was pretty much it for right here. They have the same connectors here for the PSOM and the ABS module, and then all the wiring going out that way was pretty much all the same. So really from here over, so at least 3/4 of that harness we had to redo. So what I'm going to do now, kind of the next step to make sure that I have this routed right, is I'm going to take the harness, I'm going to lay it on top of the dash, and then kind of route everything through where it needs to go, and then I'm going to kind of start taping it in sections and making sure that I have everything kind of set right. Then I'm going to pull the harness back out, and then I'm going to go through and do the final wrap on it to make it like a finished harness, kind of like how it was from the factory, you know, with all this protective braiding and everything on it. But I don't want to do that till I know I have all the wires in the right spot, so that way I don't run into problems with trying to plug stuff in. Okay, so I got this harness routed and kind of set into place. So let me kind of show you here what I'm talking about. So we have these little plastic hold downs here. They actually clip onto the dash, and then the harness runs behind it. So I just put a little bit of electrical tape every couple of inches just to hold this harness and route everything, so that way when I go to tape it all up, I know where I need to tape. So a lot of the connectors I just set into place. I didn't actually clip them in, and I really just have it laid out to where it needs to go. So now what I can do from here is take it out, do our final tape up, and then go and reinstall it and finally put this whole nightmare to an end. All right, so finally got the harness done, all taped up, kind of like how it would be from the factory. So it's set, ready to rock and roll, so I'm gonna get this thing installed. All right guys, so I got the dash done. We got wiring all back in, everything's routed, clipped into place, wrapped up, hooked up, installed, ready to rock and roll. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna just kind of lay it back up here onto the mounting points. Now it's kind of hard to do because you almost need one hand to hold the dash in place and then a second to get the dash brace in and get all the hardware started. So it's kind of awkward. It's really helpful if you have another set of hands, someone that can actually help hold the stuff in for you. But really all I do is I just set this lip of the dash up on this window channel and then just kind of hold it there, get a couple of screws started in. Usually I try and get that dash brace set up in here first too, because like I say, you can't really get the dash in without that. So You kind of got to set it in place, set the dash in, and then start lining stuff up. So it's really quite awkward. A couple of things that I did do while I got the dash out of the way just to make it easier. Like I said, I changed out the brake pedal. It was just the 4 9/16 nuts and the 2 10s. So got that switched. And then I got the block off plate here for where the clutch master cylinder used to sit. So it just attaches from the engine side. And then there's 2 studs on it, 2 13mm nuts. And then I took the accelerator pedal off, which I'll show you that here in a little bit of what you have to change on the accelerator pedal to actually make this work for the diesel. But for now, I'm going to work on getting this dash installed. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get my climate control panel in, I'm going to get my ashtray in, and then I'm going to work on getting the instrument cluster in. And then after I do that, I'm actually just going to kind of set the steering column in, get all the rest of this wiring here all bolted up, and then I'm going to turn the key on and see what actually works. See if we did this wire harness right or not. So that's probably going to actually happen tomorrow. It's getting kind of late and I'm losing some daylight, and I think my wife is ready for me to go and cook her some dinner. So I'm going to call it quits for tonight and pick back up again tomorrow. All right guys, so I'm back. I actually got a little bit ambitious again, and I kind of started working on this thing here and just didn't record anything. I really wasn't even thinking anything about it, and then I figured I'd probably stop and show you guys where I'm at. So we've got some progress done. You can see I got the steering wheel back in. Now it's not hooked up, I just put it in and connected all the wiring down here. I got the fuse box squared away. We got the control for the PHP Hydra mounted. I'm not really happy with where it's set. I just have it on with Velcro. I want to try and see if I can find a different ribbon cable, because I'd really like to mount it here in a flush mount. Unfortunately, that cable's not long enough. I can barely even get it to there. That's about the end of its travel. So that'll be a project down the road. So I got the accelerator pedal plugged in. I have everything hooked up. I even kind of went as far as I turned the key on and cranked it over to kind of see what would happen. I have a tach signal reading. My gauges started working. Everything that I would want to see started to happen. So I thought that was really good and exciting. And then I plugged in my little code reader to the OBD2 port, and I was able to communicate to the ECM, and it didn't pull any codes. So I'm really hoping that all that repinning and transferring all the connectors and wires over, I'm hoping that we did it right. I actually spoke with Dusty from 1023 Diesel today. He's going to be emailing me over the tune files that I need to program the Hydra, so that way I can at least get this thing started. So I'm getting really close to having this thing running. So what I want to show you, I do have a couple little differences here between the accelerator pedal, between the diesel and the gas. So I was going to show you the parts that we need to transfer over on that, and then we're going to get busy on getting the rear frame harness wired up and getting the fuel pump in. So off camera, I already went and switched the fuel tanks and the fuel lines. They aren't very hard to do, but good Lord, are they messy. Just dirty mess of everything. I pulled the fuel tanks out of the donor truck, which came out really easy because I had the bed off of it. And then I pulled the fuel tanks out of here, and it's just one of those, trying to transfer everything over. You got dirt falling on you. You know, you're laying on your back in the driveway trying to shuffle these tanks around. So I didn't really record any of it. It's really straightforward. The rear tank's held in with basically 4 bolts and the 2 skid plates. Undo the filler neck and the lines and it drops out. The front tank isn't much different. There's just 2 straps that go underneath of it and it falls out. So the key thing, if you're going to be doing this swap, is pull both the fuel tanks out, then run the lines and your wire harness because it's a whole bunch easier to do that with the tanks out. Having the rear tank in, I almost couldn't get the rear fuel lines back in. It was a fight to get them connected and get the little safety locks back on it. So I mean, ideally, if you can pull the bed off, it would be the best way of doing it. And you have to mount the tanks up from the bottom, but then you can hook everything in from the top. But nonetheless, we already got that part done. So I really just got to focus on doing the fuel pump, getting the fuel lines in, and then doing all the wiring. And we're going to make a harness that goes from the fuse box under the hood down to the pump. And we'll kind of go through all that. So you can see when I installed the rear harness, I did have to chop it. And the reason being is because when this harness comes through, it's right in about this area, right behind the transfer case, is where the length difference between an extended cab and a crew cab comes in. So one of the things you're going to notice here is in my test fitting of everything, I got the fuel pump kind of mocked into place, and I got one fuel line hooked up. So that's the supply line that's tied in. So like I said, we're going to try and make this work with the 6-liter fuel conditioning module. So the thing that was really kind of cool, the fuel filter for the gas engine mounted right here in these two holes. The fuel selector valve is now mounted in the stock location where Ford had it set. So we have to go through and lengthen all these wires, and I measured so let me explain here real quick. When I cut these, I cut everything at a different length. I start at one wire, and then I just kind of start cutting everything back about a ½ inch or so, 3/4 of an inch maybe, so that way all my wire lengths are staggered. So then what I got to do is go and measure where one wire ends and where my next wire starts, and I actually marked it here on the frame. I'm not really sure, I just kind of scribed it in there if you can see it. So from there to here was where one wire ended and restarted, and that length is 21 inches. So now all I have to do is go to the other harness that I can no longer use now and cut 21 inches of wire length out of it, and then go back through and solder everything together. And I'm actually probably going to cut it 22.5, or excuse me, 22. That way I have a ½ inch on each side to deal with for soldering to make it all fit. And then what I'm going to do after I get this all soldered back together is we're going to build our harness for just this fuel pump portion of it. So all I have to do from here is I need to go from the fuel selector valve, I need to go from the return to the return here. You can actually see the arrow pointing indication of fuel flow. And then we're going to go from here, some 5/16 fuel hose to here, and then we're going to do another one of these fittings that's going to go from here to the bottom line. So my bottom line is my supply, my top line is my return, and then this will be kind of mounted. Right now it's just kind of set into place. This right here is actually a factory hole that I just had to open up a little bit, and then I drilled these two holes to mount that. So the thing that's going to be cool about this is when it's done, it's going to be completely protected by the frame rail. It's not going to hang down, you're not going to see it. I don't have to worry about if I take it down a dirt road I'm going to be catching filters on rocks or anything. It's actually very well protected and tucked up in there. And the other cool part about this is the fuel micron rating of these filters is 5 microns. The stock 4.3 filter micron rating was 14. So these filter to a much smaller particle, actually 9 microns smaller than what the factory filter did. So not only is it an electronic fuel pump, but it's a better filter. It's compact, it's small, it's all factory Ford stuff. So that's kind of the main reason why I want to use this. So I'm going to work on just getting this harness kind of connected back up and put back together, and then we'll work on building the harness for that fuel pump. Alright guys, so check it out. We got one half of this harness all soldered back together. So here you can kind of see what I was talking about with staggering out the cuts in the wires. So you can see how throughout this harness everything is really not butted one on top of the other. So when I go and wrap this thing all back up, everything's going to lay in here nice and kind of slim. We're not going to have any fat spots where there's a whole bunch of repairs done all in the same section. So I'm going to work on getting the other side of this harness all put together, and then I just realized I got the wrong connectors for the fuel pump, so I'm not going to be able to get the fuel line in today, so I'll have to make a run down to Summit tomorrow and do that. But I'm going to get everything mounted up and installed as much as I can tonight, so that way tomorrow hopefully all I got to do is just hook up the fuel line, and then I can hopefully get this thing running. So yeah, I'm going to get this soldered up and then I'll be back. Alright, check it out. Got the harness in. It looks just like nothing ever happened to it. It looks like a factory install, so it's perfect. That's what we want. Got the fuel pump module back in. So check it out. Here's what I'm trying to do with these fuel lines. So this is just regular old fuel injection 3/8 fuel line. Goes to a fuel hose clamp. And the way that these work, they'll kind of just slide right over. They have a couple of O-rings down inside. And they'll slip right over here, click in, and then lock on. If you ever need to take them off, then all you gotta do is just pinch these little white tabs, and then it slides right off. So kind of cool little adapter setup. It's similar to the factory ones, but it should work perfect for this setup. So I got to run 5/8 line from here to the fitting that's going to come off. I really don't know if you can see it, but the nipple right here. And then I need to get one different adapter here. This is a 3/8 hose coming out, or 3/8 line, and it's going to go to a 5/16. So they make adapters that are 3/8 on one side, 5/16 on the other, like this right here, and then we can adapt right to it. So for now we'll get these lines hooked up, and then tomorrow I'll get the fitting for that. Alright guys, so got a new day here. We're gonna get the wiring for the fuel pump finished up. Made my run down to Summit this morning. I got the connector that I needed, so we can get the fuel line set up. So hopefully today we're actually gonna get this truck to fire off and hear it run. So let me show you what I got lined up here for my wiring schematic. Basically, we're just drawing a circuit here that we're going to have a relay that powers the fuel pump. We have a water and fuel sensor. It's going to go back to our solid state module. This guy right here, this is actually the one that was stock in the truck. And then we're basically just going to wire it back into the circuit here. So I kind of took a couple of different wire schematics to figure this out. Basically what it is the water and fuel sensor is a 6-liter. So the way that that's controlled is it basically goes 2 wires to the ECM, and then when that gets a resistance, the ECM sees it, grounds the signal out, and it tells the instrument control module to turn the water and fuel light on. This one here is quite a bit older design. It has a water and fuel solid state module. So pretty much the way it works is when the water and fuel gets ground, it sends it to the module. The module then sends it back over to the diesel warning lamp display, and then it tells the light to turn on. So a little bit more involved circuit, but it shouldn't be too bad to wire it in. Really just going to kind of use a, not that, that's for the trailer brake. But I have just a generic connector that we're going to plug into the fuse box, and then we're going to end up putting a regular 5-pin relay in there, so that way I can get power from the key to energize the relay, and then it's going to come out the connector here and it's going to go back down to the fuel pump. So I'll kind of give you the step-by-step on how to do this here. So the most important thing here is I had the batteries disconnected. When we're going to be playing with the fuse box, you're going to have live wire on the bottom of it, and then right here on this side this stud right here is straight off of the battery, so you don't want it hitting the side of the truck where it's going to short out and cause more issues than you need. So the fuse box is held in. There's 4 little tabs, 2 on each side. You just need to pull those and then slide this box up, and then you can pop the bottom cover out. So obviously I've already done that. You can see here fuse 22 is a maxi fuse, and it goes in this top slot. So what I'm planning on doing is tying my power off of this fuse. This right here is an unused relay. You can see there's no pins in it. So this is what we're going to pin, and we're going to put our fuel pump relay right here. Then I can mount my inertia switch probably right up off of here, and then we're going to run the wiring down and then right along the frame wire harness. So I checked this before I kind of tore it all apart, and on the back side of our fuse box here, these are the 2 wires that power fuse 22. This bigger red and green one is the supply to that fuse, and then this smaller red and green one is the fused side. So it's power going in through the fuse, power coming out. So what I want to do is I want to draw power from this red and green wire. That way, if the fuel pump fails, it's going to pop that that fuse 22, that maxi fuse. So we're just going to basically cut this wire, splice into it, and then we're going to put our new pin right up inside of the relay here. So here's one thing that we have to do with the fuse box. In order to add pins, we have to remove the lock. And Ford is pretty good about making all of their locks red in color, and they usually have a pretty easy way of removing them. So on this particular one, since I want to get to the locks for this relay, I have to pull all the relays out of this box, and then there's 2 releases. There's one here at the top and one here at the bottom. And really, all you got to do is grab like right on here with a pair of pliers and hit the lock and pull up, and then do the same on the other side. And then when you get the 2 locks released, you can actually just walk this piece here right on out. And what this does is it has these little fingers on it that when you put the connector in, it'll lock them into place so that way they can't fall out. So you can see here now we have access to add our pins in, or if we need to remove them, you'd be able to get in there, and kind of hard to see, but on the top side there's a little lock. You could just lift that, slide the pin right out. So we'll start adding our pins in. So we got this little pigtail added in for the relay, and that's coming off of that red and green wire that is the fused side of circuit 22. So all I did was I cut it, I just soldered this in, and you know guys, I apologize, I'm not recording as I do it. I hope you can understand that in these tight spaces it's kind of hard for me to get the camera in a place where it can see what I'm doing and me see what I'm doing, and kind of make it all to where it makes good video. So I figure I can at least show you how I did it. So nonetheless, this is going into pin number 30, which is going to be this guy right here on this relay. So all we have to do is take the pin, line it up into the slot, and give it a push. And then when you hear it click, it's going to lock in. So now we have our first pin of 4 in that relay. So now we got to do this pin here is going to go to the fuel pump. We're going to have our switched power and then a ground to kind of control that whole circuit. So we'll move on here to the next one. It'll actually be the pin that's going to go pin number 87, and we're just going to kind of run the connector down, and then we're going to start building everything off of it. So I've been working on getting this inertia switch installed, and I don't think I ever really explained the importance of what this switch does. I mean, some people may know what they are if they're familiar with Fords, if they've heard of it before, but really what it is it's a switch that will detect an impact, and then it opens the circuit. So you know, they're most commonly used for a fuel pump circuit, so that way if the car gets into an accident, they trip and reset. So the way that they work, they have this red button on the top. This is currently tripped, so if you were to ohm across the 2 pins in here, you would see it reading OL. If you push this down, you hear it click. So now it's an active switch. It's going to allow current to flow through here. They'll stay in that down position until they detect an impact, and it usually has to be a fairly decent impact. You know, you're not going to trip it going down a bumpy road if you're out four-wheeling, but when it does, there's a little ball inside of here. You can't hear it when the switch is tripped, but when this is set, you can actually kind of hear the thing rattling around. When it comes out of its seat, it has like a little spring check lock in there that when it releases that, this pops out and it kills everything. So definitely not needed for the setup we're doing, because like I say, the fuel pump's powered off of the key. I'm just doing this as an extra little safety measure to make sure that it's going to work and be safe. And, you know, heaven forbid, like if my wife was driving it or something like that, she got into an accident where the fuel lines ruptured, you know, I'd just like to have that little extra safety measure that the fuel pump's going to shut off. So I'll show you how I got this here wired into the truck. So here's where I got the inertia switch mounted. So it's just held in with 2 screws. It's real simple and easy. And it sets right here just above the air filter. So here's how I have this wired. I changed my mind about 15 times before I actually kind of settled on something. But the wiring from the inertia switch comes down, it goes into here, it ties off of the power that comes from the relay to the fuel pump. Then I kind of doubled back off of here, and I got a ground wire, so my ground for the relay is right here. And then for my water and fuel sensor, I ended up deciding to mount it here. It's about the best place I could find. There is no real like mounting tab on this to hang it off of something, so I just decided to put it right off the side of where the trailer brake and charge relays are. And then I was trying to figure out, so there's 4 wires on this thing here that you have to wire back in. There's a red and yellow, which is the switch power. Red, which is well, there's a red wire, and then there's a black with a blue stripe. Those 2 go back to the warning light indicator that's inside of the instrument cluster of the dash, where the wait to start light is. So that would mean that I'd have to go back through this connector, repin everything into the dash, and trying to figure out where that wire was on here. It was just kind of turning into a headache. So what I ended up doing was I took these wires, you can kind of see here, that put them back into loom. They run their way back, and I pinned them right back into the ECM connector. Originally I had taken them out because I had intentions of mounting that in a completely different location, and I didn't think I was going to have access to this connector. So I just went and repinned them in, so they're back in the stock location. And then all I have to do is this red and black wire. This is one that actually goes to the sensor. So again, I tied it back into this harness here that goes to this plug that we added. So it has 3 pins. The wires are basically water and fuel pump, and a ground wire. So then this is actually going to get mounted right down here, and it's going to follow the frame harness going back to where the fuel pump is. So that leaves us kind of down to this part right here. This is a connector that's going to plug into it. Again, 3 wires. Should be really easy to do from here. And then once we get this done, then I can actually turn the fuel pump on. We can dial in our fuel pressure. So I'm still waiting on my tunes from 1023. I was really hoping that he was going to call me today, and he hasn't. I'm kind of bummed out about that, but one of the things that he did tell me when we were talking on the phone the other day was that I could actually just unplug the Hydra and run it. I mean, obviously it's going to run like garbage. The injectors are twice the size of stock ones, over twice the size. So that got me kind of thinking what I might end up doing is just going to Hydra's website, downloading a couple of stock tunes, and that way I can at least try and get the truck to run, make sure it runs on the Hydra and everything. So I'm still trying everything I can to make this thing burn some fuel today. So I'm going to get this kind of routed and run in and hooked up, and I'll show you what we did for a finished product. So here's the finished product. So we got the other connector in here today, the fuel line connector. So it's a 3/8 to 5/16. I think it actually looks really good. It looks like it was meant to be there. And then we got our wiring all done. So again, this is the water and fuel sensor, and then this right here is the fuel pump connector. So it's all wired in. Everything's hooked up. So what we're going to do now is we'll get the battery hooked back up. We'll turn the key on. We'll check to see if we have any initial fuel leaks. Then we'll get our fuel pressure set. And then we'll go back through and check it one more time. And then we'll get a tune loaded in here and see if we get it to fire. Okay, so we got our batteries hooked up. Again, the final install here, if you check it out, it actually looks pretty clean. I don't see anything that would look too out of place or anything that'd be an issue. So let's turn the key on. We should hopefully hear the fuel pump run. Oh, I hear it. That's exciting. Okay, so we don't have anything leaking here. I don't see anything dripping on the ground. This might be good news. All right, so initially I'm going to set this here about 68 psi. And then when it's running, I'm going to go back through and double check, and I should see right about 65 to 70. So I'm going to call it good right there. We'll load a tune in and see if we can get this thing to run. All right, guys, I'm not really sure how well you're going to be able to see this. I can tell you're getting a ton of reflections from the windows and everything else here, but I'll try and see if I can show you. This right here is the Hydro Flash program. And what I need to do is get my box or hex conversion code, and my ECM is a MME7. So it's telling me I need to use VEAB 20B. So we're going to change this first one here, and we're going to go VEAB 20B. Okay, so these right here are all my calibrations. So I'm just going to go factory stock here on the first one, and then we're going to go with whisper mode here for number 2, and then we're just going to click here on program. It's going to take it a minute here to program everything, and then I'm hoping, I got my fingers crossed, that this thing's going to start. All right, so it tells me right down here that we've programmed it successfully. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect here. Okay, let's see what happens. Well, it was exciting. I did see the oil pressure gauge jump to the normal range. I'm going to give this a couple of minutes here. We're going to let the starter cool down, and then we're going to try it again. Oh yes. Alright guys, well, I'm going to give this thing here about 15 minutes of runtime. It's gonna run kind of like garbage right now because it is running a stock injector tune with 205cc injector, so it's just getting way too much fuel right now. But what I want to do is just have it run for a little while. That way I can get some oil through the turbo. We can get the high pressure lines all kind of burped out and purged, and then I can get the fuel pressure dialed in and set where it needs to be. So I'm just going to kind of let it do its thing, and I'll be back in a flash, really. All right, guys, so we're about 15 minutes of runtime on this now. I'm sure you can hear already the idle in it is mellowed out. It is still idling pretty high and pretty aggressive, but again, I don't have the right tune for it. So it's getting too much fuel, it's throwing the idle calibration off. But the good news here is I don't have to check engine light. I can communicate to the HFCM. The throttle response on it's pretty solid. I'm not leaking anything. It goes into gear. I don't have any boost leaks, exhaust leaks. I'm freaking stoked about this. So I gotta hurry up to get this darn seat installed, so that way I can actually go out and drive it and enjoy it and see how it actually runs. So let me show you here something. The thing I wanted to show you was, if you look at the RPMs over idling, we're right about 900 RPMs. Like I say, it's kind of high. But if I put our Hydra to our quiet idle mode, you can immediately hear how much quieter it is, and it dropped the RPMs down to about where they should be, and the noise from the engine kind of got a little bit more normal. So I'm really kind of curious to see what happens when I get the correct tunes, and then I can do you know, actually hear this thing run like it's supposed to. But even with it in the regular stock bypass mode and you hit the throttle, the response is crazy. It just wants to run. It's awesome. I'm so happy with the way that this is coming out. So I'm basically going to just shut it off. I'm going to go through and double check like the oil level and that kind of stuff, and then I'm going to call it quits for tonight. I think I'm going to do one more video on this truck of at least getting the interior back together, and we'll do the installation, the wiring on these gauges here, because right now I just kind of have everything really just hokey thrown in, and we'll do a nice install on that, kind of like what we did for the fuel pump. So I'm gonna call it end of a great episode, and we'll kind of just catch it on the next one and finishing everything up. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, all those fun things. Tell me what you want to see on the next one. See you guys.